In a congressional hearing room bathed in the unforgiving glare of fluorescent lights, Caroline Levitt stood at the podium, her cream-colored blazer a stark contrast to the rich mahogany walls, her heart racing beneath her composed exterior as she faced Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, who strode through a side door flanked by her legal team, their faces etched with a steely resolve that electrified the air with tension, a palpable anticipation that had gripped the nation for weeks ever since. Crockett, a 43-year-old progressive Texas congresswoman and former civil rights attorney, renowned for her razor-sharp intellect and methodical approach, filed a staggering $80 million defamation lawsuit against Levitt, a 28-year-old rising star in the Republican Party and the youngest GOP spokesperson in history, whose meteoric rise from Donald Trump's White House press office to a conservative media darling was now imperiled by a single, ill-fated statement made 3 months prior during a heated Fox News segment on congressional spending, where Levitt, with the confidence of youth and the fervor of her base, accused Crockett of diverting funds meant for her district's infrastructure to personal projects benefiting her donors, declaring with unshakable certainty, "The evidence is clear for anyone willing to look." A soundbite that exploded across conservative media, amplified by pundits and viral clips, igniting a firestorm of outrage and speculation, unaware that Crockett, a woman who had built her career on precision and accountability, would respond not with a press release, a tweet, or a counterattack on the airwaves, but with a federal lawsuit that threatened to bankrupt Levitt and send seismic shockwaves through the political media landscape, potentially redefining the boundaries of free speech, accountability, and the consequences of reckless rhetoric in American politics. The stakes were nothing short of monumental, as a victory for Crockett could not only destroy Levitt's financial stability and budding career, but also force every commentator, politician, and media figure to reconsider the risks of unverified attacks. While for Crockett, the lawsuit represented a bold, unyielding stand against what she termed consequence-free character assassination, a chance to restore integrity to a political culture increasingly poisoned by sensationalism and half-truths. Now, in this oak-paneled room, stripped of all but Levitt, Crockett, their respective legal teams, and 3 senior congressional mediators tasked with facilitating this last-ditch effort to avoid a trial that could reshape the nation's political discourse, the atmosphere crackled with the weight of what was at stake, as political analyst James Morton had warned in a widely circulated op-ed. This case could fundamentally alter how political figures engage with each other and the media. A Crockett win might set a precedent that changes the rules of the game forever. Levitt's attorney, Richard Hale, a seasoned Washington lawyer with a reputation for navigating high-stakes disputes with a calm, strategic demeanor, opened the proceedings with a measured tone. "We're here today in good faith to resolve this matter professionally, and Ms. Levitt has prepared a statement she wishes to deliver directly." But Crockett, seated across the large oak table in a sharp navy suit, her posture rigid and arms crossed, exuded an aura of controlled intensity. Her lead counsel, Marissa Washington, a formidable defamation attorney with a track record of dismantling high-profile opponents in court, responding with a cool, cutting edge. "We're not here for performances or theatrics. We expect a substantive resolution that addresses the harm caused." Levitt, her hands trembling slightly as she placed her carefully prepared notes on the podium, began, her voice steady despite the nerves gnawing at her core. "Congresswoman Crockett, I requested this meeting because I believe this situation stemmed from a misunderstanding that has spiraled out of control. The statement I made was based on reports I trusted at the time." But before she could continue, Crockett interrupted, her voice low and deliberate, slicing through the room like a blade. "You accused me of corruption on national television, Ms. Levitt, reaching millions of viewers. You didn't cite vague reports. You stated it as fact, and there's no misunderstanding about the damage you caused." The temperature in the room seemed to plummet, and mediator Congressman James Wilson, a veteran of Capitol Hill's most contentious negotiations, raised a hand to restore order, urging, "Let's maintain decorum and allow Ms. Levitt to complete her statement." Levitt nodded, grateful for the reprieve, and pressed on. "As I was saying, I now understand that the reports I referenced have been called into question, and I acknowledge my error. I'm prepared to issue a public retraction and apology on the same network where the statement was made." For a fleeting moment, It seemed like a step toward resolution, but Washington slid a document across the table, her tone unyielding. A single apology is insufficient. Our terms are clear. Full, primetime apologies on Fox News, CNN, and MSNBC. Written apologies published in the Washington Post, the New York Times, and Ms. Levitt's hometown paper. A $5 million settlement to be donated to infrastructure projects in Congresswoman Crockett's district, and a legally binding agreement that Ms. Levitt will never again comment on a congresswoman's handling of district funds. Levitt's legal team recoiled, Hale nearly choking on his response. $5 million for a single mistaken statement is utterly unreasonable. But Crockett leaned forward, her eyes locking onto Levitt with an intensity that silenced the room. Mistaken? You knew exactly what you were doing. This wasn't a slip of the tongue. It was a calculated attempt to damage my reputation and career. The mediators shifted uncomfortably as the tension escalated, and Levitt's team huddled in a frantic whisper. But Levitt herself broke away, stepping toward Crockett, her voice softer now, almost pleading. Congresswoman, I understand your anger, and you have every right to feel it, but $5 million would ruin me financially. I'm asking you, person to person, to reconsider. The room held its breath, the raw vulnerability in Levitt's plea cutting through the formalities. But Crockett studied her for a long moment, her expression unreadable, before responding. You should have thought about consequences before you spoke. Actions have costs, Ms. Levitt, sometimes very high ones. One of the mediators, Congressman Sarah Ellis, tried to de-escalate, suggesting, perhaps we could explore a more manageable settlement figure. But Crockett stood, gathering her papers with a deliberate calm, her voice resolute. Our terms are non-negotiable. Meet them, or we proceed to trial, where we'll seek the full $80 million in damages. We have polling data quantifying the loss of support in my district, financial analyses of fundraising impacts, and communications from your client's team suggesting they knew the claims were questionable before the broadcast. The revelation landed like a thunderbolt, Levitt's face paling as Hale stammered. That's impossible. We haven't seen any such communications in discovery. To which Washington replied with a chilling confidence. You will, once our motion to compel is granted. As Crockett moved toward the door, her legal team in tow, Levitt made one final, desperate attempt, her voice breaking as she used Crockett's first name for the first time. Jasmine, please. This will destroy my career before it's even started. I'm begging you to show some compassion. Crockett paused at the threshold, turning slowly to face Levitt, her words precise and measured. You should have thought about careers when you tried to destroy mine with lies. Sometimes the best lesson is the most painful one. And with that, she exited, leaving Levitt standing alone at the table, the weight of the moment crushing her spirit as one mediator whispered to another. I've never seen anything like this in 20 years on the Hill. Outside, cameras flashed and reporters shouted questions at Crockett's departing team, the private meeting having somehow leaked to the press, setting social media ablaze with speculation about what had transpired behind closed doors. 3 days later, in the cluttered confines of Hale's office, surrounded by boxes of documents, Levitt sat in stunned disbelief as the motion to compel revealed a damning trail of internal communications, texts between her Fox News producer and a researcher, with the producer pressing, "Do we have solid confirmation on the Crockett corruption angle?" And the researcher responding, "Not exactly. It's from that blog we discussed. No mainstream verification. Maybe pivot to something else." Only for the producer to reply, "No time. Caroline's prepped. Just say reports indicate to cover us." Worse, Levitt's chief media advisor had edited her briefing document, stripping away qualifiers and presenting the unverified claims as established fact. A betrayal that left Levitt reeling, her voice barely above a whisper as she said, "I genuinely believe the information was confirmed by multiple sources." Hale, his face grim, outlined 2 paths forward. Fight in court, arguing Levitt acted in good faith based on the information provided, or present the evidence of her team's misconduct to Crockett's camp to negotiate a more reasonable settlement. Levitt, grappling with the realization that her team had set her up to fail, made a bold and impulsive decision, defying her legal team's advice to call a press conference, standing alone before a sea of cameras, her heart pounding but her voice steady. 3 months ago, I made false statements on Fox News about Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett's handling of district funds. I've since learned that my team provided me with unverified information, removing critical disclaimers from my briefing materials. I take full responsibility for my words, have terminated those involved, and offer Congresswoman Crockett a complete and unreserved apology. For the harm caused, I didn't intend to spread falsehoods, but I failed to verify the information personally, and I will accept whatever consequences come. The room erupted in murmurs, reporters scribbling furiously as the bombshell unfolded, and within an hour, a breaking news alert flashed across screens. Crockett was holding her own press conference, standing at a podium in the Capitol, her expression unreadable as cameras flashed. Crockett began, "I've seen Ms. Levitt's press conference, and I appreciate her acknowledgement that her claims were false. However, the damage to my reputation, my district's trust, and my fundraising cannot be undone with a simple apology." She paused, shuffling her papers, then continued, "But accountability takes many forms. Ms. Levitt has admitted fault, fired those responsible, and shown some measure of integrity. Therefore, I'm amending our lawsuit. Instead of seeking $80 million from Ms. Levitt personally, we will pursue $1 million from Fox News and the Political Action Committee that employed the staffers who provided her with false information, and I'm proposing that Ms. Levitt join me in a bipartisan initiative to establish fact-checking standards for political communication." Gasps rippled through the press corps, stunned by the pivot, as Crockett added, "This isn't about destroying Ms. Levitt's career. It's about creating real consequences for a media ecosystem that thrives on sensationalism over truth. If she's sincere, this is her path to make amends." That evening, as both press conferences replayed on every major network, Levitt received a private text from Crockett, the first direct communication outside legal or public channels. "My office, 9 a.m. tomorrow, just you, no lawyers." The next morning, Levitt arrived at Crockett's office, her nerves frayed but her resolve firm, finding Crockett alone, reviewing documents at her desk, who gestured to a chair without looking up, saying, "Thank you for coming. I wanted to speak person to person." Levitt nodded cautiously, and Crockett continued, "Let me be clear. I don't believe you were simply careless. You were reckless in a system that rewards recklessness, and there's a difference. But your press conference took courage, and it was the right thing to do." Sliding a document across the desk, Crockett outlined a draft of their joint initiative, Principles for Political Communication, including mandatory fact-checking, source transparency, and proportional platforms for corrections when errors occur. "If you're serious about making amends, I want you as a co-sponsor, not just signing on but actively promoting these standards, especially to your side of the aisle," Crockett said, her tone firm but not unkind. Levitt scanned the document, her mind racing with the weight of the moment, and nodded slowly. "These are principles I should have followed from the start. I'll do it, not because of the lawsuit, but because it's the right thing for our political discourse." Crockett extended her hand, and as they shook, both women understood they had forged something extraordinary, a bridge across the partisan divide built on the unlikely foundation of a defamation lawsuit. When they emerged from Crockett's office together, reporters staking out the hallway erupted in questions, but it was the image that captured the nation's attention. Two political opponents walking side by side, neither triumphant nor defeated, but resolute in a shared purpose. A photo that went viral within minutes, with commentators across the political spectrum struggling to make sense of this unexpected alliance. The amended lawsuit proceeded against Fox News and the PAC, ultimately settling for $2.5 million, more than Crockett's reduced demand, but far less than the original $80 million and the Crockett-Levitt standards. As they came to be known, gained astonishing traction, with 6 major news networks, including Fox and MSNBC, adopting modified versions of the fact-checking protocols, social media platforms introducing special labels for verified political claims and unverified allegations, and law schools incorporating the case into curricula as a landmark in defamation law, examining how it reshaped legal accountability for public figures. A national survey revealed that 78% of Americans, across party lines, supported stricter fact-checking requirements for political commentary, reflecting a rare bipartisan consensus in a polarized era. Crockett, once seen primarily as a partisan progressive voice, emerged as a leading advocate for accountability, appointed to chair a new House Ethics Subcommittee on Public Communications, while Levitt, after a period of lying low to weather the backlash from some conservative circles who branded her a traitor for working with Crockett, re-emerged with a podcast, Verified, blending her conservative advocacy with a newfound commitment to factual precision, earning praise from younger conservatives who saw her actions as principled, with one right-leaning columnist writing, "Levitt's stand was deeply conservative. She took responsibility, faced consequences, and worked to build something better. Isn't that what we claim to value?" 6 months after their initial agreement, Crockett and Levitt appeared together on 60 Minutes, their first joint interview, where Crockett addressed the inevitable question. "People ask if we're friends now. We're not. We disagree on nearly every policy issue, but we agree that democracy can't function without a baseline of factual discourse." And Levitt added, "I learned the hard way that words have consequences. What began as the worst mistake of my career became an opportunity to contribute something meaningful." The impact rippled beyond media practices, with political consultants adjusting strategies to prioritize verification, news executives implementing stricter protocols to avoid legal liability, and voters responding positively to the shift toward accountability. On the first anniversary of their agreement, Crockett and Levitt held a joint press conference to announce a bipartisan pact dedicated to supporting candidates who committed to factual political communication, with Crockett declaring, "A year ago, we were adversaries in a destructive legal battle. Today, while we still disagree on policy, we're partners in promoting a healthier political discourse." And Levitt adding, "The lesson wasn't just about fact-checking. It was about having the courage to admit when you're wrong and work across differences to fix broken systems." The $80 million lawsuit that never reached trial accomplished what few legal actions ever do. It changed behavior across an entire industry, forcing newsrooms to tighten verification processes, political operatives to think twice before feeding unverified claims to spokespersons, and the Crockett-Levitt standards to become a benchmark for accountability, studied in law schools and cited in editorials as a turning point in political media. The final image that dominated coverage, Crockett and Levitt shaking hands beneath a banner reading, "Fierce but factual," encapsulated a rare moment in American politics. Adversaries who had turned conflict into collaboration without compromising their core beliefs. As Levitt reflected when asked if she regretted how it all began, "I regret making false claims, but I don't regret where it led us." And Crockett nodded, adding, "Sometimes the coldest confrontations spark the warmest breakthroughs, if you're willing to face the truth and do the work to make things right." What began with Levitt begging Crockett to drop an $80 million lawsuit, and Crockett's icy rebuff, had transformed into a case study in how accountability, when embraced with courage and conviction, can lead not to destruction but to meaningful change, not just for two women, but for an entire political ecosystem desperate for reform, proving that even in a divided nation, a shared commitment to truth can build bridges where none seemed possible, reshaping the rules of political engagement for generations to come.